Okay, so moving on, we've got separator here that does an enormous amount of crops, and I won't go into every little detail of every little crop that we've done, and but there's quite a lot. But we'll talk about beets and carrots and parsnips, which is one of the main uses for it. So what do we do differently on carrots? Well, we look at carrots in two different ways, for instance. So we've got main crop processing carrots, so they're a bold 40mm diameter, chunky thing, blunt end, quite easy for us to work with in terms of that. Now, we've got some options here really. So most carrot growers will be on sand, but what they're looking for is lots of loose soil to be chewed out, small stone, some leaf to an extent, but shear lifted carrots, really quite easy for us to deal with. So what we do differently for carrots, generally speaking, we'll run our standard potato 6-rib 10mm rollers, but we run the clod rollers in transfer. So contrary to what we do for potatoes, where we get phenomenal cleaning and we can chew huge amounts of soil through and clod, we change the setup. Everything runs in the same direction, so we go about it differently. So we mentioned before about minimum speeds of 120, 130 RPM and no gap. Well, we're doing it different, so we change all these settings to give us an advantage and to give us the cleaning without losses. Our biggest problem with carrots is they're pointy. They get stuck in corners. If we start running rollers in the opposite direction, it's likely we'll get the odd one getting stuck and sitting there, and then another one and another one. That's fairly expected. So how do we still get good cleaning when we run all the rollers in the same way? Good point. Well, we spent a lot of time developing this spiral roller, and as you can see, the 6-rib one with a 10mm, that's 10mm high, we have a lot of ribs on there, so we have 6 per roller, so we're always nibbling away of anything that's in that valley. Obviously it's a lot better with the clod roller running in the opposite direction, but even though we run it in the same direction, the tread pattern still works, so it's still very, very good at chewing away small clod, stone, leaf, especially loose soil, whilst all the rollers go in the same way. But we still use the clod roller to our advantage. So, but we're now looking at opening that gap up. So depending on the size of the crop, we'll move the clod roller further away from the spiral roller, and we'll also play with the speed of it as well. So as you'd imagine, as we're running that clod roller faster and faster, as anything drops into the valley, if the clod roller is running very fast in the same direction, it's going to help lift it out and move it down the table. Whereas if we run the clod roller very, very slowly, the clod and stone and soil will still stay in the valley for longer. So the speed control still gives us that adjustment and fine tuning. Again, we spoke about the height in previous videos. If we lift the clod roller higher, it's harder for anything to escape out the valley. So we still get all the same features, and we still, by using the same adjustment. The difference being is we can increase that gap. So we often find, just as a rule of thumb, that we'll generally run the spiral rollers slower than we do in potatoes when we're running the clod roller in the opposite direction. When we're running in the same direction, we'll drop down from 120 to 130, and we'll probably drop that down to nearer 90 to 100. And then the clod roller, again, we can use that full range. Again, start in the middle, see how you get on, adjust that gap out. I would probably say for bold main crop carrots, we'll start at 6mm or 1/4 of an inch, and that will give you a good starting point to go from. And again, as I mentioned before, when you're making adjustments, if you want to speed that clod roller up or down, or you want to change the gap, don't be afraid of making a big jump. In fact, if you can go, it's better always to go a bigger step away and then bring that back to where you should be. If it's small steps, will only just give you a very marginal difference. You perhaps won't see the benefits if you're going the right way or the wrong way. So bear that in mind, be brave, make some big adjustments, and you should then see what's making it better, what's making it worse, and you can bring it back to the middle or the best ground. Having said all that, we generally do run them in transfer, and that's generally where we are with main crop potatoes, carrots. But we have other options, but we rely on other things. So there is a situation where we can actually run clod rollers in reverse on carrots, contrary to what I've just said. But we need a certain circumstance for that to happen. And that being, we need to flood or certainly wet the separator with water. And what we found over the years is, providing the machine is thoroughly wet through, so we're having to spray quite a lot of water on there, or the machine's been installed after a wash line, providing the separator is wet, we can actually run the clod rollers in reverse, because what the water does is makes the crop or the product, whether it be carrots or parsnips, it makes it slippy enough that it physically cannot grip the surface of the carrot. So, as you can imagine, we've still got a choice of spiral rollers. If we were in a wet environment, as I'm explaining, my preferred option would be to put the less aggressive spiral roller on with the 6mm rib, run the clod roller a little bit closer to the spiral rollers, so you're perhaps less than 6mm, 3, 4, 5, 6, that area. Providing everything's wet, we can run the clod rollers in the opposite direction, and that will drastically improve the cleaning, and especially on horn. So if you've got a lot of, or should I say leaf, so if you've got a lot of green top coming up, straw, particularly a problem, small stone, providing you can get the separator wet enough, you can reverse that clod roller. Even on the standard rollers you can reverse it, but probably better and safer on the less aggressive roller. So that would be a wet environment as opposed to a dry environment. So quite a lot we can do with that, and you can always mix different spiral rollers on the machine as well. So you've got a few options there, and hopefully that will help you get things settled better on your carrot and parsnip crops. Okay then, so let's have a look at some videos now of how we set the machines up in carrots. As said, we've got a dry environment and we've got a wet environment, and we can adjust the machine accordingly to the amount of moisture or wetness on the separator itself. So we'll start off here with a dry environment, and really what we're looking to do is be able to take out straw and leaf. Now generally speaking, if all the rollers are travelling in the same direction, it's quite difficult to take that leaf and that straw out. So to enable us to run the clod rollers in reverse, we have to have a very wet environment on the separator itself. So just on this video in front of us, we've introduced quite a lot of straw, probably more than you would get as an average, and we're feeding that into a flume destoner, which is flooding water. It's soaking the straw and it's flooding that water and straw over the separator. But because it is so wet, it's almost impossible for the separator itself to be able to grab the carrots. But it will in fact, because the roller's running contra-rotating, grab the straw and pull that through. Now on the videos you can see just in front of you, where we just run in a slow-mo, you can see that effect happening. So we've got the rib roller working with the clod roller, pinching the straw and pulling it through. What we have to be mindful of, as you can see, is overwhelming the separator. So when we get to a point where the layer of carrots is more than a single layer thick, and perhaps even 2 layers thick, it makes it very, very difficult to extract that straw, because it will sit and float above the crop. That's generally what happens. So we need an even layer of crop, not overwhelmed, and that allows the straw to find its way nearer to the valley where it can get grabbed at some point. Straw tends to bind up with other straw, and then it takes it through in lumps quite quickly. So it's a very, very efficient way to remove leaf and straw. And together with that, if we've got stone and sometimes clod as well, when the rollers are running in reverse, we can get a virtually 100% clean on carrots. So adding water into the mix makes a terrific difference. It's not always practically possible. The situation we see on this video shows a flood of water coming over on a specifically designed machine, which might be quite difficult for end customers to do, but it is possible, and that is available from most manufacturers. But we can mimic that, and the way we mimic that is just literally to spray a deluge of water directly down onto the separator. So rather than having a tank full of water and flooding it, we present the crop dry, but we'd have a number of spray bars with larger jets, and we'll pump water directly down onto that separator. So providing those rollers are all absolutely wet through, as you can see in that video, that takes away any grippiness or ability to grab carrots and pull them through. So that's been a successful one. That works very well also, and it adds a lot of power to the cleaner in terms of what it can do. So in terms of speeds, gaps and so on, again, it's very difficult for the separator to be able to grab anything, so we can actually set that machine quite aggressively. So perhaps we won't be running the separator at high speed. We'll slow the RPM down on the spiral rollers from flat out being 130, we'll probably run that at 90 or 100. The clod rollers, we can run them quite aggressively, so we'll run them quite fast in reverse. In terms of gap, we don't want a gap, we want that close so that it's able to pinch the straw. When you compress straw, it's only barely a millimetre or two thick, so if we have a tight gap between the ribs of the roller and the clod roller, it should then pinch that horn, pinch that straw and pull it through. So really we don't want a gap. But hopefully that'll show you a little bit of what can be achieved, and then we'll be able to move now on to the dry version of running the separator. Okay, so quickly on to dry carrots, if you like. So crops that's coming straight off the field, all manner of soil, some stone, clod and whatnot. This is very general to how crop comes into the store. So what the cleaner can do at this point is take out really the vast majority of the loose soil. It'll break some of these lumps up, and it will do a good pre-clean. When perhaps won't get 100% cleaning operation done on conditions as difficult as this, and really this video shows the worst of the worst. So we'll run this video through. It'll be interesting to see possibly more so what comes out from underneath the separator rather than what we see on top. So run the video to the end, you'll see what I'm talking about. And as said on the earlier video, we're talking about running everything in the same direction. We're going to run the spiral rollers at a good pace to keep a good average flow of crop over the separator, so we're not overwhelming it. And we're manipulating the speed of the clod roller, the gap and the height to give us more cleaning. So as you can see, it's tough conditions. There's a lot of crop that's stuck together in clumps, and it needs time to break apart. So we have a presentation conveyor on this video showing how it breaks the lumps up, and that gives the separator time then to do its cleaning action with a nice even feed. So generally speaking, we're running the spiral rollers quite quickly on here, so we want them running quick enough so they don't bung up with soil because it's such sticky conditions. The clod rollers we're running on this situation, we're running them halfway up. We want a reasonable gap because with everything going in the same direction, it's not going to be as aggressive as running the clod rollers in reverse. So we still need the crop to sit in that valley for a longer period of time as we can to get the best cleaning. So what we'll do is we'll move the clod roller away. We can go anywhere from 1 or 2 millimeters all the way up to 6 or 10 millimeters if conditions allow. What that's going to do is it's going to open up that valley, so the clod and the stone will sit lower between the rollers and have a much better chance of being extracted. And then we talk about the speed of the clod roller. So as you can see on this video, it's all fairly chaotic. Crops passing over quite quickly if the carrots are end on and going straight over. Other carrots will sit and roll. So we need to give it time to work. and to hold the crop back, to give it time to do that job, we can then slow down the clod roller itself, and we can also lift it up. So there's a couple of things we can do other than just the gap. So the clod rollers on this situation are running relatively slowly, so the slower we run that clod roller, the less chance there is for the clod to climb out of the valley and then move down the table. We're talking about extreme conditions on this video, as you can easily see. Sticky clay soils, we've got a lot of stone, we've got some weed, we've got some straw in there as well, so we're working the separator quite aggressively even though we're in the transferring setup. So 6mm gap more or less, clod rollers are halfway up, but we're running them quite slowly, so that allows the crop to sit in that valley for longer, to allow more time for the ribs of the rollers to pull through the clod and the mud and the stone. Now as we move to the latter part of the video, it's quite an old video, it's probably 20 years old, so the quality is not quite there, but it's a very, very good, gives a very good explanation of what's possible. So as you can see, the vast majority is sticky clay and stones coming through the waste belt and moving away. You will always see a few broken tips of carrots. The first question most people will ask is, oh right, well it must be the separator, but be mindful of this. If you look carefully on the videos, especially at the start where you can see the crop coming from the hopper, you'll often see broken pieces of carrots from the shear lifting of the harvester. So if you're seeing some losses coming through and perhaps broken carrots, make sure you have a look in the hopper. Just have a check and just see what's coming up, and don't be misled to thinking it's always a separator. Perhaps it's already happened and the separator is just taking out those small broken pieces, which it will, because it's in a regular shape and it's small and it's easy to extract. So gives you a good idea of what's capable. We've set it quite aggressively. If you're in a cleaner environment with less mud, perhaps you're on sandier soils, perhaps you won't need as big a gap. You could probably keep that gap less, perhaps nearer 2mm, and you can also run those clod rollers quicker, so the crop is not sitting in the valley for too long. Again, small carrots will get extracted more easily, so look for a less aggressive setting for smaller carrots and dry conditions and lighter soils. So faster on the clod rollers at this situation and less gap, and hopefully that will give you a good indicator of where to be for setting up on a dry environment. Thanks very much.